Shabbat Shalom. Although it was most certainly not his intention, there is some good that has come out of Kanye West's, or Ye, words about the Jews. In an open letter to the rap star, New York Times columnist Bret Stephens wrote, "With a few outbursts in a few days, you threatened in a tweet this month to go DEFCON 3 on the Jewish people. So what's the good that came out of this? Well, it has turned the media, and frankly Jewish attention," Bret Stephens notes, "to ongoing anti-Semitism, which has been virtually ignored." Now, just to give you an idea, about 2% of the population, or 2.5% of the population of the United States, is Jewish. Do you know what percentage of all religiously motivated hate crimes were committed against the Jews? 5%, I think this was 2020, 5% would be double. 10% would be 4 times disproportionately. 25% would be 10 times disproportionately. The answer, 55%. Here's some more from the Stephens editorial. Many of the incidents in New York have happened in sections of Brooklyn that have been popular with generations of Hasidic families, like Crown Heights and Williamsburg. Jewish pedestrians in the neighborhood have been assaulted or harassed. Women have had hair coverings ripped from their heads, and synagogues have been vandalized. Gil Montrose is an African-American pastor at Mount Zion Church of God, Seventh Day. He lives in Crown Heights. He noted, quote, "You have this mixture of African-Americans and Hasidic people, and then you have gentrification. All of this is colliding in Crown Heights, and it leads to young people committing crimes where they live." But there hasn't been a whole lot of coverage. And just to put it in perspective, in New Jersey, a woman hung nooses near a sign for a black candidate. That, Stephens notes, was covered on the CBS news station. He also points out that in Hollywood, where the new Academy of Motion Pictures opened its doors last year with a panel dedicated to, quote, "creating a more inclusive museum," there are dozens of existing rooms and exhibits there. And yet there is barely a mention of Harry and Jack Warner, Adolf Zucker, Samuel Goldwyn, Louis B. Mayer, the Jews who essentially founded the modern movie industry. So inclusive Hollywood has excluded the Jews. The universities in America have become hotbeds of anti-Israel and anti-Semitism. As one example, boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, known as BDS, that singled out one country to boycott and demonize, Israel. That movement gets great support from university students as well as their faculty at universities across America. A couple of months ago, for example, at UC Berkeley, 9 student groups agreed to ban all speakers who were, quote, supporters of Israel. Think about that. Ban speakers who were supportive of Israel. The rule was written by Berkeley law students for justice in Palestine. The rules included not to, quote, lend platforms to speakers who have professed or continue to hold Zionist views. It bans speakers who support the existence of Israel to speak on any topic. Erwin Chemerinsky, who is the dean of the law school, and he has spoken here at Stephen Wise Temple, remarked in an email to students, "Indeed, taken literally, this would mean I could not be invited to speak because I support the existence of Israel, though I condemn many of its policies." Among the campus group adopting this rule, in addition to the Berkeley Law School Muslim Association, were the Middle Eastern and North African Law Students Association, Women of Color Collective, the Queer Caucus, Asian Pacific American Law Students Association, among others. Kanye West has paid a price for his comments. I'm curious, do these student groups receive funds from the university? I'll bet they do. They're public schools, taxpayer-funded public schools. We help pay for those schools. Did they lose any of the funding, any of those student groups? I'll tell you, all of this has certainly, many years ago, caused me to rethink my charitable giving. It doesn't matter to me where anti-Semitism comes from, but I have to confess, as much as I find West's comments deplorable, I'm far more worried about what is happening on our campuses because it is institutionalized anti-Semitism. It is happening all the time. It is unfortunately widespread, and it is all too rarely condemned by university leadership. 2 weeks ago in the Jewish Journal here in Los Angeles, the lead article was written by Gil Troy, who's a professor of history at McGill University. He wrote, "Today's Jew hatred of the salon," the university, however, lurks under the radar or behind a mask of social justice talk. It is far more subtle, insidious, and disturbing because it comes with mortarboards, tweed jackets, and hipster tattoos, and it launches a series of guided missiles aimed at the Jewish soul, making too many of us feel guilty for being attacked, and too many others feel ashamed of our identity, of our homeland. It's now fashionable, my friends, for anti-Zionism to be acceptable on college campuses. I don't mean a discussion of any policy about Israel. I'm talking about Israel's existence. So what's the impact of that atmosphere on campus? The Louis D. Brandeis Center for Human Rights Law found that 65% of students who feel proud to be Jewish and are committed to Israel feel unsafe on campus. Let me repeat that. 2 out of 3 Jewish students, 2 out of 3 students who are proud to be Jewish and committed to Israel do not feel safe on their campuses, and fully 50% of Jews feel compelled to play down their Jewish identity. If Catholic, Protestant, Muslim, or Black or other students at universities found themselves canceled or didn't feel safe on campus, there would be an uproar. There would be task forces, editorials in student newspapers, and, Troy points out, the diversity, inclusivity, and equity administrators would make it a top priority. I get absolutely no joy from reporting this about higher education. I know that we Jews are enamored with education and universities, so it's not easy for me to say these things, and some of you may not like hearing it, but it's my responsibility to call out anti-Semitism and hatred of Israel wherever it is. I feel we owe it to the victims of the past and the victims of the present. That an organization like Stand With Us was created to combat hatred of Jews in Israel on the college campus is tragic and necessary. You may love universities, you may love rap music, you may love classical music. But when Jew or Israel hatred is spewed, it is our task to say it, to identify who is saying it, whether from the halls of the universities, whether it's Kanye West or Richard Wagner. And it is not enough that Jews are the ones to speak out on anti-Semitism. In fact, in some ways, it's far more important than not that non-Jews do so, and here's why. I've heard the Jews described as the moral Mary's canary, that's cute, moral miner's canary of the world. You all know what miner's canary are, right? So miners, when they go into a mine, there are toxic fumes there, but they are odorless, and they don't smell it until it's too late. They take a canary with them, which is much more sensitive, and if they see the canary get sick or dies, they get out of the mine because of the noxious fumes. The Jews are the moral miner's canary. We are often the first to experience toxic moral fumes, but we are never the last. We are a litmus test. And so it behooves the rest of the world to be very aware when Jews are mistreated, or when Israel, acknowledging her faults, is singled out among all countries for boycott. The only country singled out for boycott, BDS. The only country in the world today singled out for annihilation by another country, Israel, at the hands of Iran. Those who spew such hatred are not only a threat to the Jewish people, they are a threat to good people everywhere. Anti-Semitism is the longest and most enduring hatred in history, and it is worthy of great study. Tonight, naturally, our time is limited, but in the future, in an upcoming sermon, I hope to address two fundamental questions about anti-Semitism. The first, why? Why does anti-Semitism exist? In other words, why are the Jews the focus of such hatred? I learned, and I know many other Jews hold, that the reason is because we're the scapegoat. That's not an answer, because it doesn't answer why the Jews are always the scapegoat. I believe there's another reason, one that I think will give many of you pause. And the second question I want to address another time. What can be done about it? We may never see a world devoid of anti-Semitism, but I look forward to sharing some ideas that I believe may hopefully significantly diminish it. And wouldn't that be a blessing? Shabbat Shalom.